Kate, a bright-eyed 15-year-old with dreams bigger than her surroundings, lived in a small, cluttered apartment with her mother, Terry. Their home was a modest one-bedroom unit nestled in a run-down part of town, where peeling paint and flickering lights were a daily reminder of their struggles. The air was thick with the scent of stale food and desperation, yet it was a space filled with love. Despite their hardships, the bond between Kate and Terry was unbreakable. They shared laughter over simple meals, comforted each other during tough times, and dreamed together of a brighter future. Terry, a 38-year-old single mother, worked long hours at a local diner, often coming home exhausted but still finding time to help Kate with her schoolwork. The weight of their financial struggles pressed heavily on her shoulders, but she was determined to provide a better life for her daughter. "One day, things will change," she would often say, clutching Kate's hand as they sat on the worn-out couch, eyes filled with hope. Their life was a constant balancing act, trying to make ends meet with little to spare. Kate often wore clothes that were a size too big, hand-me-downs from friends or donations from well-meaning neighbors. Yet, she wore them with pride, holding her head high and refusing to let her circumstances define her. In school, she was a diligent student, excelling in her studies and dreaming of scholarships that could take her far away from their cramped living conditions. One day, everything changed. Terry met Chris, a charismatic man in his late 40s, during a late shift at the diner. He was charming, with a magnetic smile that drew people in, and it wasn't long before he began to shower Terry with attention and gifts. Initially, Kate was skeptical of Chris. She could see the sparkle in her mother's eyes and the way Terry lit up when he walked into the diner. He brought with him promises of luxury, a shiny new car, expensive dinners, and the kind of life they had only seen on television. When Terry announced that they would be moving into Chris's upscale apartment, Kate felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The new place was a stark contrast to their old home, with marble countertops and modern appliances that seemed to shine under the fluorescent lights. Kate's room was larger, with a window that overlooked a bustling city street. For a moment, it felt like a dream come true. But as they settled into this new life, Kate began to notice changes. Terry seemed more preoccupied, often lost in thought or distracted by Chris's demands. He would come home late, reeking of alcohol and surrounded by laughter that filled the apartment, but somehow always left Kate feeling more alone. As the weeks turned into months, Chris's true nature started to emerge. Initially charming, he revealed a darker side, particularly when he drank. He had a temper that would flare over trivial matters, turning small disagreements into explosive arguments. One evening, after a minor argument about the dishes, he slammed a cabinet door, sending a glass vase crashing to the floor. Kate watched from the safety of her room, heart racing as Terry tried to calm him down. "You're too sensitive, Terry," Chris shouted, his voice echoing through the apartment. "This is my house. You're lucky to be here." Kate felt the air leave the room, her heart sinking as she listened to her mother defend Chris, insisting he was just stressed from work. It was in those moments that Kate began to realize how easily someone could manipulate love and trust. The atmosphere became thick with tension, and the laughter that once filled their home began to fade. One fateful evening, while Terry was at work, Chris cornered Kate in the living room. The laughter of a party could be heard in the background as he leaned in closer, his breath heavy with alcohol. "You're a pretty girl, Kate," he said, his tone making her skin crawl. "You should learn to keep secrets." Fear washed over her, and she felt trapped. Chris was much bigger than her, and she knew she couldn't fight him off. "What do you mean?" she stammered, backing away, her heart pounding in her chest. "Just keep quiet, and everything will be fine. I wouldn't want to have to throw you and your mother back to the gutter." His words hung in the air like a dark cloud, and Kate felt the weight of them crush her spirit. She nodded, terrified, hoping he would leave her alone. The incident left Kate feeling isolated and ashamed. She confided in her mother, hoping for understanding and support, but instead, Terry dismissed her fears. "He's good to us, Kate. You just need to behave," she insisted, her voice laced with frustration. "Don't make trouble where there isn't any. You're imagining things." The betrayal cut deep. Kate had always trusted her mother to protect her, but in this moment, it felt as though Terry was siding with the enemy. The emotional rift between them widened, leaving Kate feeling more alone than ever. As the days passed, Chris's behavior escalated, and Kate withdrew into herself, avoiding her mother and spending long hours in her room, feeling the weight of her circumstances pressing down on her. Terry, caught in the whirlwind of her new life with Chris, seemed oblivious to Kate's suffering. She became increasingly dependent on Chris for financial support, ignoring the warning signs that something was very wrong. Kate's heart ached as she watched her mother change, the once vibrant woman now dulled by the relationship, her laughter replaced with silent submission. The tipping point came when Kate discovered she was pregnant. Panic surged through her as she stared at the small plus sign on the test. She felt trapped, her mind racing with thoughts of what this would mean for her future and her relationship with her mother. Unable to face Chris, she turned to her grandmother for support. With a heavy heart, she packed a small bag and slipped away one night, leaving behind the life that had become a nightmare. Arriving at her grandmother's rural home, Kate was enveloped in warmth and love, a stark contrast to the coldness she had experienced in Chris's apartment. Her grandmother welcomed her with open arms, sensing the weight of pain in her granddaughter's heart. As she settled into life in the countryside, Kate found solace in the simple routines, helping her grandmother in the garden, cooking, and studying. She enrolled in a nearby school, determined to keep her education alive for the sake of her unborn child. Each day brought new challenges, but she was fueled by the hope of a brighter future. While her grandmother cared for her, Kate focused on nurturing herself and the baby growing inside her. She often thought of her mother and wondered if Terry had realized the true nature of Chris. A part of her longed for reconciliation, for the warmth of their old life, but another part knew she couldn't return to that toxic environment. The love between mother and daughter that had once been unbreakable was now strained and fragile, and as Kate prepared for the challenges ahead, she knew that her journey was just beginning. With each passing day, she felt a sense of empowerment and resilience growing within her, determined to create a better life not just for herself, but for her child as well. In the quiet of her grandmother's home, as the sun set over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the fields, Kate made a silent promise to herself: she would not be defined by her past. She would rise above the darkness and fight for the life she and her child deserved. Kate settled into her new life with her grandmother in the rural area, where the pace of life was slower and the air was filled with the sweet scent of wildflowers and freshly tilled earth. Her grandmother's home was a modest but warm place, adorned with colorful quilts and family photographs that told stories of generations past. Here, Kate found comfort in the rhythms of country life, far removed from the chaos of her previous existence. Every morning, the sun rose over the horizon, casting a golden hue across the fields. Kate would wake early, helping her grandmother tend to the garden, planting seeds and watering the plants while discussing the latest happenings in their lives. Her grandmother, a woman with a gentle spirit and wisdom etched into her weathered face, became both a mother and a friend to Kate. They shared laughter and stories, with Kate feeling safe for the first time in a long while. But the transition wasn't without its challenges. As a new mother, Kate struggled to balance her responsibilities. Caring for her baby boy, whom she named Elijah, while attending school was no easy feat. She would wake in the middle of the night to feed him, her exhaustion battling against the determination to succeed in her studies. When the sun rose, she would quietly place Elijah in his crib, ready to face the world outside. Her grandmother supported her unconditionally, often taking on the role of caregiver while Kate attended classes. "You need to focus on your studies, dear," her grandmother would say, her eyes twinkling with encouragement. "You're going to make something of yourself. I believe in you." At school, Kate faced her own set of trials. While she was determined to do well, the weight of motherhood often made it difficult to concentrate. The other students, some of whom had known her before she left, looked at her with a mix of admiration and pity. They admired her for returning to school, but some whispered behind her back, speculating about the young mother's choices. However, Kate remained focused, pouring her energy into her studies, determined to create a better life for Elijah. As the months passed, the bond between Kate and her grandmother deepened. They spent evenings together, sharing stories of their past and discussing dreams for the future. Kate would often find herself sharing her fears and hopes, her grandmother listening intently, offering guidance and love without judgment. "You have the strength of our ancestors in you, Kate," her grandmother would remind her. "Never forget that." Meanwhile, Terry's life took a darker turn as she continued to live with Chris. At first, his charm and wealth had dazzled her, filling her with hope for a brighter future. But as time went on, the illusion of a perfect life began to crumble. Chris was no longer the attentive partner she had once known. He became increasingly possessive and cruel, revealing his true colors as he flaunted his lifestyle with younger women. Terry found herself in a cycle of denial, often brushing off her unease. When Chris brought home different girls to the apartment, his laughter echoing through the halls while Terry sat silently, she felt a gnawing discomfort in her gut. Each time, he would say, "They're just friends, Terry. You need to lighten up." But it felt like a betrayal, and with each new face, Terry's heart ached a little more. One evening, after a particularly lavish party where Chris had paraded his new friends, Terry confronted him. "Chris, this isn't what we talked about. You promised me stability, not this chaos." Her voice trembled as the reality of her situation sunk in. Chris merely laughed, brushing her concerns aside. "You need to understand, Terry. I work hard for my money. I can do what I want. If you don't like it, maybe you should consider if you really belong here." Those words cut deeper than she expected. It was in that moment that Terry realized she had traded her independence and self-respect for a facade of luxury. The emotional toll weighed heavily on her, and she began to feel the suffocating grip of regret. Each day, she would look at the photos of her and Kate on the walls, memories of a happier time, and she felt a sense of loss. As the nights grew longer and the parties louder, Terry became a shadow of her former self, drowning her sorrows in alcohol, seeking solace in temporary escapes. She often found herself staring out the window, longing for the daughter she had pushed away, wishing she could turn back time and protect Kate from the darkness she had allowed into their lives. The conflict within Terry reached a boiling point when she received a phone call from Kate's grandmother. "Terry, we need to talk. Kate is doing well, but she's worried about you. She loves you, and she misses you," her grandmother said, her voice filled with concern. Terry felt a pang of guilt wash over her. "I'm doing what's best for us," she replied defensively, but deep down, she knew it wasn't true. She had put her relationship with Chris above her daughter, and the weight of that decision crushed her. The internal struggle raged on as she tried to reconcile her love for Chris with the undeniable truth of his behavior. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, the distance between mother and daughter grew. Kate was thriving in her new environment, but Terry remained trapped, clinging to the remnants of a relationship that was only dragging her further into despair. The realization that she had lost sight of her values and priorities tormented her, leaving her feeling empty and alone. One evening, as Chris returned home late, reeking of alcohol, he found Terry in tears. "What's wrong with you?" he snapped, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Get over it. You're being dramatic." His words cut deep, and in that moment, Terry recognized the man she had fallen for was nothing more than a facade. She had allowed herself to be blinded by wealth and charm, ignoring the signs that screamed for her to leave. The emotional turmoil she faced was overwhelming, and as she sat there, she realized she had to make a choice: either stay and continue to suffer or find the courage to leave. As the seasons changed, Kate grew stronger, both as a mother and a student. The rural landscape around her mirrored her transformation: flowers bloomed, and life thrived. She became a fixture in her community, often volunteering at local events, and the people around her admired her strength and resilience. Despite the distance, Kate missed her mother deeply. She would often look at Elijah, wishing for him to have a grandmother who loved him just as much as she did. The ache of separation gnawed at her heart, and she longed for reconciliation. Yet, she also understood that healing required time and patience. One fateful day, while helping her grandmother bake bread, a familiar car pulled into the driveway. Kate's heart raced as she looked out the window and saw her mother step out, her face a mixture of hope and fear. Terry's eyes searched for Kate, and in that moment, time seemed to stand still. "Mom!" Kate called out, her voice breaking as she ran to the door. They embraced, the warmth of their connection washing over them like a wave, but it was tinged with hesitation. "I'm so sorry, Kate," Terry whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I've been lost. I didn't know how to find my way back to you." Kate felt a rush of emotions: love, hurt, and the yearning for understanding. "I missed you, Mom." "I've been scared," she replied, her voice trembling. In the days that followed, they began to talk. Conversations flowed like the river outside, sometimes turbulent and other times gentle. They shared stories of their struggles and their triumphs, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been broken. Kate recounted her life with her grandmother, and Terry opened up about the darkness she had faced with Chris, revealing the toll it had taken on her. As the bond between them rekindled, both Kate and Terry began to empower one another. Kate found strength in her mother's vulnerability, and Terry, inspired by Kate's resilience, sought to reclaim her identity. Terry made the brave decision to leave Chris, recognizing that she deserved a life filled with love and respect, not fear and manipulation. She moved in with Kate and her grandmother, beginning to forge a new path for herself and her daughter. They worked together to create a home filled with laughter and love, gradually transforming their lives from one of despair to hope. Kate continued her studies, driven by her newfound sense of purpose. With her mother's support, she excelled in school, dreaming of a future where she could provide for her son and break the cycle of struggle. She often found herself reflecting on her journey, realizing how far she had come from the girl who once felt lost and powerless. As they stood together, watching Elijah play in the garden, Kate and Terry exchanged smiles that spoke volumes. They had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, united by love and resilience. The past would always be a part of them, but it no longer defined their future. Together, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that they had each other to lean on. In the golden light of the setting sun, Kate felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had transformed from a girl seeking approval into a young woman embracing her identity, her role as a mother, and her connection with her mother. They had shattered the illusions that once held them captive and were now free to write a new story, one filled with love, understanding, and hope for a brighter tomorrow.